Hi, I'm Peter Carlson. I'm a real estate broker here in the city of Chula Vista, county of San Diego, California. I wanted to put together a quick video today that would talk about some of the proposed changes coming down the line for tenants and landlords in the city of Chula Vista. The last 6 or 12 months has made it apparent that there are some shortcomings in current law and current ability of our local attorney's office to be able to enforce existing state law at a local level. The tenant protection ordinance or tenant landlord ordinance that's being proposed by the city or being proposed to the city does make some substantial changes to property owner rights for landlords. And there's been a lot of controversy about this. So I wanted to go over some of those changes and some of those proposals and see if there's a way that we can try to work together to find common sense solutions. So as it's written, the tenant protection ordinance being proposed to the city of Chula Vista would impose rent control like measures on landlords, and that would be in regards to notice requirements as well as relocation allowances that pertain to no-fault terminations. A no-fault termination is when the tenant is not in breach of contract, but the landlord still would like to exercise their right to terminate the lease. Most commonly, this is done when an owner goes to sell a property, when they want to substantially remodel it, or if they want to pull it off of the market entirely, or even potentially move back into the property. For the City of Chula Vista ordinance, it by default would pertain to all rental properties within the city. There are exclusions allowed if it's a single family home, meaning that it's separately deeded, like a home or a condo where they're each individually owned, as well as in situations where it's a duplex or a room rent out, and the duplex would mean the owner would have to reside in one of the sides, or if they're renting out rooms in their own house, they could be excluded. However, one of the concerns is the only way to get a property excluded is to have very specific wording in the lease agreements that would exclude the property. Otherwise, it would the tenant protection ordinance would apply to anybody. That's obviously a concern for our military who are out of town that may not have access to all of this kind of information, that could be hurt, that could be not able to move back into their own properties. There's a lot of concerns there. So the other things that the ordinance does is it imposes in most cases of a no-fault termination either a 120 or 365 day termination notice requirement. And that's going to change based on whether the resident is elderly or disabled. So under normal circumstances, it would be a 120-day requirement. If they're elderly, meaning 62 or older, or if they're disabled as defined by the state of California, it would be a 365-day notice requirement. And that would be if they wanted to sell the property, if they wanted to remove it from the market, or if they wanted to do a substantial remodel or upgrade to the building. It would also require tenants to receive a 2 or 3 month relocation allowance, and the amount of the allowance would be based on the housing and urban development numbers released for recently rented properties based on zip code and bedroom. And after looking at those numbers, they're substantially higher than what current market rents hold. And the concerns that we have about that is, number one, it's going to cost a landlord not 2 or 3 months, and again, that's 2 months under normal circumstances or 3 months if they're elderly or disabled. But the concern is that could be 3 or 4 months of relocation allowance. And an even bigger concern, and this may affect tenants, and tenants should be very aware of this, is when landlords see those published rates, they're going to automatically think that they are under market value. For instance, in 91915, a 4-bedroom was listed at like $5,700. And I don't know of any 4 bedrooms in 91915 that have rented or that are renting at $5,700. Some are close, but that's a very high amount. And a 4-bedroom condo is much different than a 4-bedroom single family. And even then, I've seen 1,800 square foot 4 bedrooms, and I've seen 3,000 square foot 4 bedrooms. So there's a big discrepancy in what that all might include. And the concern is that landlords that may not be savvy to that are going to look at that and say, oh man, I'm undercharging my tenants. I need to raise the rent more. And obviously we don't want to affect tenants that way. We don't want to cause undue burdens to them. But this ordinance may put it in the minds of landlords that they are under market value. So that's one of the concerns. If they're elderly or disabled, it's a 3-month notice requirement. If the owner wants to move back into their property, it's still a 60-day notice, which is required by the state of California, as well as either a 1 or 2 month moving allowance. So even if the owner wants to move back in, they still have to give a relocation allowance to their residents. And this would pertain to any lease agreements that have been in place for at least a year. So if a tenant has been in place for less than a year, then they would not be covered under this. There's 3 main concerns or 3 main shortcomings under current situations that need to be addressed. And 2 of those I think can be addressed fairly easily. The third may not be quite as easy. But first, the inability of the city to prosecute and enforce current state laws. We need to be able to have tenants that are being harassed have an outlet and have a method so that they can let people know, so that they can hold those landlords accountable. 99% of the landlords out there are good. I work with hundreds of clients, and the landlords that I work with are good people and well-meaning, and nobody wants to be lumped in with the scumbag landlords that are out there trying to take advantage of tenants. We all want proper accountability. We need the city to be able to do that. And a simple ordinance that doesn't damage the housing market should be available to do that. Secondly, we want a reasonable definition of substantial remodel. That might be stricter than state law. However, what's being proposed by the city is very, very strict and would make it very expensive and costly and hard to qualify for such a reason as that. And again, we can I think work together to come up with a solution to that. The third issue that may be tougher is we have a housing shortage in San Diego. In the county, we are over 80,000 units short of the supply that we need to be in a balanced market. That's reflected in the high prices of the resale market and the rental market. And anybody that's gone out there to buy or rent knows exactly what I'm talking about. We need to get more housing. We need to find ways to get more housing available for people. And that leads me into the main concern of this tenant protection ordinance is its unintended consequences will be and have been so far, even just discussing it, many landlords deciding to take their properties off the rental market. We have a lot of single family homes, many of which would be able to be excluded under the, using the correct wording. However, landlords have it in their mind now, especially after the last 2 years of COVID, where they've been thrown under the bus, they've been left to fend for themselves, that the government really cares nothing about landlords. And not only that, but they expect landlords to single-handedly carry the housing burden that they have imposed on its citizens. And there's a lot of concern about that. And a lot of landlords in California, especially after having one of the highest state taxes in the country, are now saying they want out. So they're pulling their single family properties off the market. And that hurts tenants because it decreases the level of inventory available for them to rent out. It decreases housing options. It pushes them more into apartments and multifamily complexes where it may not be as good of a value, or it may not give them the location that they want. So this is a big concern for all tenants. I believe that if we can find ways to increase the housing supply, a lot of these other concerns and problems are going to go away. Obviously, the displacement of people in multifamily buildings is a big concern, and I understand that. Unfortunately, we're in Chula Vista, and there's not a lot of other areas surrounding here that can absorb a large number of people into their housing supply. To the south, we have San Isidro, we have South San Diego, and there's just not a lot of options even for people to move into those locations. And even if they want to move elsewhere in the county, most other areas are going to be more expensive. As insane and crazy as the prices are here, it's even more expensive in other parts of the county, sometimes 30, 40, or 50% higher. So there are some legitimate concerns that tenants have, but we have to find a way to work together to find ways to increase housing supply. And this tenant protection ordinance will do the opposite. It's going to decrease housing options for tenants. And we're concerned how that's going to impact the housing market in general and the need for even further regulations. And so we're concerned about those unintended consequences. We want to make sure that we can come together and find reasonable solutions. If you would like to discuss this matter, I'd love to have a call or a Zoom conference or even meet in person. Reach out to me. My contact information should be somewhere in the link down below. You can reach out to me on my cell phone, 619-370-6555, or my email, peter@praehomes.com, praehomes.com. Reach out to me. I've been an advocate and a citizen of the community here for over 30 years. I'd love to continue to be, and I'd love to continue to see our city grow and thrive and become great and not degrade to some of these other levels of cities that have rent control. We want to keep our area looking great. We want to keep values up. We want to keep housing options available for tenants, and we want to keep and maintain reasonable landlord rights. So I appreciate you listening. I hope that you'll share this with your friends. If you'd like to subscribe to my YouTube channel, feel free to hit that link and watch some of my other videos as well. I appreciate your time. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks.